beneficiaries. Okay. Smile. Okay, that's very interesting. Smile is something that we don't usually hear. Equity, lifestyle enhancement. Okay. Narendra Modi. We're getting very interesting answers. Uh, SDG goals, betterment, positive vibes. Okay. Fulfillment, inclusivity. Okay. But some people are really having fun with the question. Okay. So I think we are all aligned that most people gave similar answers and are close to what how we think about impact as well. It is about bringing about a positive change in people's lives, and what all of you are saying also echoes what we think. So we're glad to have such a good bunch of people around to interact with today. So with that, we'll just take you through the flow for today's session. We will be starting with the commonly asked questions, which you guys filled a form to register for this session. We had a section there where we could ask any questions that you wanted to know from the panelists. So we have compiled a lot of them and made sure that we will be covering those questions in the first 10 to 15 minutes. After that, we'll have an open forum where all of you will get the chance to ask any questions that are still yet unanswered after the first section. You can we will take you through how the open forum will go when we come to that, and finally the next steps and the recruitment process. So with that, we'll start with the commonly asked questions. The first question that we see the most, and obviously, like this is the first one that people ask, is they just want to know more about GDI. It's also a major expectation from today's session. So we actually have a couple of slides to guide you through this part, and I'll be taking you through it. So I'll just start off. So GDI is a mission-driven organization, right? It is not driven by anything else but the core mission that it was founded for. So our mission statement is that we are an impact-driven startup which is committed to transforming the lives of individuals and communities for an equitable and inclusive world. Now, I just want to take you through the core elements of this mission statement so that you understand where we are coming from. So when we say we are an impact-driven startup, it means that we think of impact as a core element of every project that we do and any work that we do. And we consider the impact in terms of the outcome of that project as key before we start doing anything. Second, our work should transform the lives, obviously, positively, of individuals and communities. Why we specifically say individuals and communities is because we look at the benefit of each individual and the community as a whole, because we do believe that communities are important for all individuals to thrive in. And finally, we want that the work that we do causes or results in a more equitable and inclusive environment, which means that everybody should have an opportunity to work towards whatever they want to achieve. So with that, I hope that the mission statement is clear. And this is the core of whatever work we do. So this is very important to understand. Next, we'll tell you how we actually achieve this mission. So there are two main ways or two types of programs that we employ to achieve this mission. The first is governance transformation. So within that, we work with governments and large institutions to solve socioeconomic and environmental issues, which are impacting the citizens in those areas. An example of that is For example, we are working in multiple states to improve the statewide quality of air through very targeted interventions, and we are working with the state governments to implement these programs. The second type of projects that we do are strategic projects, which are strategy design pieces. In these, we develop strategies and insights that help leaders of impact-driven organizations through well-researched and data-backed evidence. So an example of that is is there a problem in my voice? Is there a
I think
problem?
you're audible, Ronak.
Okay, some people are saying there is an issue. Okay, great. Um, all right, I'll continue. So, yeah, so an example of a strategy piece is, let's say we do landscaping of models that a philanthropy can use for improving for financial inclusion and employment generation. So this is just a broad overview of the kinds of projects we do, and we will deep dive into a project later on. So you will get to know more about the work we do. But moving on to our journey till now. So GDI was founded in 2020, and we've had a great journey where we started with just one project in one state with just a team of 5 people. And now in as we come to celebrating 4 years of the firm, we actually have obviously worked in multiple different states, but also in Africa and Sri Lanka. And we have had the opportunity to work in 9 different sectors where we just started from one, which was education. And now we are a team of 60 plus people who are all committed to the mission statement that I took you through earlier on. And the most important metric here is the lives impacted. We obviously started from when we started till now, we've had 20 crore people impacted through the work that we do, and that is what drives all of us here in the team to continue doing what we do. So yeah, we are hoping that all of you are also committed to keep taking this number to even greater heights, and hopefully we can all achieve even better numbers in the years to follow. So that's been our journey, and how we are able to achieve this, a key element of this is with our partners. So we work obviously, as I mentioned, with governments and philanthropies who facilitate our projects and are key in implementing the projects. But we also work with sector subject matter experts and sector specific organizations who lend their expertise to us to ensure that the interventions we are coming up with are really targeted and implementable, and really help in scaling the projects. So this is a broad overview of the work we do, what drives us, how we have come and where we are right now, and the people that we work with. I hope that this answers most of your questions, but I'm sure that as we go ahead in the session, we'll be able to answer even more questions that you have. So we'll move on to the next question that is most commonly asked, which is what kind of projects does GDI typically work on? And to answer this, I will invite Vijay to give an insight into this.
Thanks, Ronak. Like Ronak said, that it can be broadly categorized into two. One is strategy design, and second is the governance transformation. So I'll quickly walk you through a project that I've been part of, and explain how GDI really contributes to the impact that we've been talking about. I'll just request Ronak to help you with the slides. Ronak, can we go to the next slide? Yes. Um, when we talk about UK as a union territory, a lot of things come to our mind, and agriculture is something that's been very special to me, because that's the project that really helped me to get an opportunity in GDA and to work closely with the government. Next slide, Ronak. Yes. So these are some of the projects that GDA has been part of. And a quick disclaimer here that while we'll be talking a lot about agriculture, I just want you to remember that agriculture is one of the sectors where GDI works and not the only sector. And primarily GDI is very sector agnostic. And what really matters to us and how do we choose our battles is based on the impact potential that every project has in its own, and quick differentiating factor between any kind of intervention and how agricultural systemic transformations are pretty different. So if we talk about say an education sector, the shorter term output could probably be better school infrastructure, and the long term outcome could be improvement in learning levels. While all of these would contribute to economy in some form, it does not necessarily translate into an household income level, or to be specific, the equity of an household in the shorter run. Yes, definitely in the longer run, there is an impact. But agriculture is one of those sectors where the immediate output or the immediate long term outcome is also the equity of an household. So gives you an opportunity to understand people better. It gives you an opportunity to enter right into the kitchen of the household and understand after your intervention what they're exactly eating, because it necessarily translate into real income at the end of the day. And yes, apart from the fact that I've been part of this project, what really excited me was the terrain of this project. Um, so JNK was a new terrain, of course, for GDI and for me. And though we had sectoral expertise in agriculture working in Odisha, JNK needed something very different. Ronak, next slide. So when we talk about Jammu and Kashmir, most of the time we think about the scenic beauty, the mountains, uh, and probably best place for a summer vacation or to explore the snow. But probably when I talk about agriculture, then people might be thinking about apples and saffron. But why is this so? So there are two primary questions. So is agriculture not the primary occupation in Jammu and Kashmir? Definitely not. So it's the 70%, of 70% of the population in J&K are dependent on agriculture and allied activities. And the second question probably could be: does J&K have something unique? Is there something that is only grown in J&K, or probably that I can buy only from J&K? The answer is definitely yes. So to even further sum it up, the things that grow in any part of India could be easily grown in Jammu and Kashmir, but the things that grow here only grow here. So that also adds to the uniqueness. But for some reason, we've not been talking about a lot about J&K from the agriculture perspective. And the problem statement here was, though the land had its own inherent potential, it was not harnessed to a great level. And that called for a systemic transformation rather than addressing a single focus area within agriculture, because agriculture itself comprises of multiple other subsectors like horticulture, animal husbandry, sheep husbandry, etc. So the key takeaway from that I want you to take from this part is Jammu and Kashmir, though being a state which had its own inherent qualities, lacked the systemic transformation for many years. Rhonda, next slide. So, what does this systemic transformation exactly mean? So, I'll again explain from the context of HADP. In HADP, we have about 29 schemes, and it does not only address a single focus area within agriculture, but it's spread across different subsectors of agriculture. So, this essentially the theory of change that we're talking about here is through these 29 schemes or projects, we try to focus on certain strategic areas like stronger supply chains, enabling better value chains, building robust market ecosystems, because of which we eventually envision an economy which is agrarian driven, where the contribution of agriculture GDP to the overall state GDP is much higher at the sunset year, which is after 5 years. And the major levers that we try to use here is the system itself. Though the system transform itself so that there is high capital infusion that's coming into the system, because of which there are employment opportunities and enterprises being developed. So eventually, any system transformation that we talk about, at the nutshell, works on improving the total factor productivity, which is essentially meaning that all your inputs gets efficiently utilized so that your outputs and outcomes are multifold. Next slide. So what does it translate to a layman? So if I were to explain what's HADP and what are the outcomes that we're talking about, what's the total factor productivity, what does it lead to? And this is a slide that answers the questions. So we have about 29 projects which are focused on strengthening core system, harnessing the advantage of J&K, value chain development, and building the overall agricultural ecosystem. And what we are envisioning is from a 37,000 crore GDP per year to a 65,000 GDP. That's from 2% to 11%. We want agriculture sector to contribute to the overall growth. And at the end of it, we want 13 lakh farm families, uh, out of which most are small and marginal farmers, to be benefited out of this program, thereby creating enterprises and employment opportunities through adequate skilling. And these numbers are the outcomes that we're really, really chasing day in and day out. Next slide, Roman. Yeah. So to further deep dive into the project, what exactly does GDI do in such a massive program? The program is one of its kind in J&K. It's the first time that the government is investing so much in agriculture sector, and we're really happy to be a part of such wonderful initiatives. And the contribution that we bring to the table is more strategic and more functional in nature. So to explain with an example, uh, the bigger problem statement that we have in terms of the credit linkage is that most of these projects or schemes are back-ended subsidies, which means that applicant needs to establish a unit and then the subsidy would be given to the applicant. So, which essentially translates to a layman as a project which is only affordable by a large farmer. But whereas the focus of our initiatives are more skewed towards small and marginal farmers. So, this is where credit becomes an important aspect. So, how do we bridge the gap between the financial institutions and the field? How do we ensure that farmers get easy access to credit? Are some of the areas that we're working. Similarly, in the agri extension, um, typically the traditional system would have asked us to hire more manpower and deploy them more on field so that they take the message to the farmer. But with the help of technology, we've reduced so much manpower requirements, and we're able to disseminate the right information to the farmer and also impart the adequate skills. So across these work streams, market linkage, credit, agri extension, and communication, the focus has been on implementing the project better on ground. And at the same time, uh, we use certain enablers to achieve this. And one of them being data and technology, which is a very integral part of our interventions. Next slide. Yeah. So over this journey, few key things that have really happened to our team. So some of our initiatives that we've been working on for months got launched by the LG himself. And one thing that we sort of understood over this journey is when your initiatives get such big limelight, you also tend to generate demand for your initiatives organically. So, what we are currently seeing is the launch events and followed up by the certain numbers that we've been able to achieve. So, like through our service delivery, we've been able to reach out to 6 lakh plus farmers and create profiles so that the delivery of these services have been targeted. And through innovative extension, we've been able to design strategy for establishing 2000 Kisan Khidmat Gars, which are basically extension services to farmers in a much more digitally advanced manner. And we see that uh, almost every two panchayats in J&K has a Kisan Khidmat Ghar being planned to be inaugurated. Similarly, at the outcome level, our focus has been largely on impacting these 13 lakh farm operating families, and we are on the right track as of now. And all these interventions are possible only because we have the backing of government. We are a think we being a think partner to the government, we're able to implement this. So this gives us a very important learning that why should you work with governments and why should you work with people who are outcome focused? Because government has the mandate and resources to get things done, and the impact is multifold. So we always believe that data speaks much louder than anything else, and this is without getting into the integrities, this is how we've been progressing. So historically, when we started the program about 592 days back, uh, we were really struggling to take it to the ground. And thanks to our interventions, thanks to the support that we received, we almost clock about 1,500 applications per day that's coming in. And so far, we've been able to impact 3 lakh families. So that's something that we're really proud of, and we really look forward to take this to more households and impact more people through this journey. And yeah, that's from my side, Ron.
Thank you so much, Vijay. And we all, even inside GDI, are really inspired by the Jammu and Kashmir project. I mean, at the end, we all believe that farmers are the backbone of the economy, and we're really happy that we have a project working so hard to solve their issues. Um, so yeah, thank you so much. And I'll move on to the next question. These two questions are more people centered. So now we'll close the presentation and we'll actually focus on the people who are speaking. So yeah, this next question is for Aditya. And Aditya, the question is, what does a typical day at GDI involve? And how do roles and responsibilities differ for various positions within the firm?
Thank you, Ronak, for the question. So, I will actually put myself on the shoe of how my typical day looks like on a day-to-day basis. So, as I mentioned, I'm working with Ministry of Rural Development, and we are trying to build a tech platform where all the rural self-help women are part of the digital initiative and where they can avail financial and other government schemes through the digital means rather than going through the physical established channel. So if I am a consultant working with Ministry of Rural Development, and as a GDI consultant, my day will involve some bit of problem solving. Now, this problem solving can be of as simple as how to get this message delivered to a rural woman, or how to ensure that rural women where there is no technical capabilities to ensure that their app is being used. So the problem solving varies quite a lot. Then again, when we are done problem solving, how to present it in the concise and digestible manner to both senior and junior stakeholders. So this second bit becomes how the output is being produced, either getting it done myself or coordinating with team to get it done. Then when we have done problem solving, we have an output with us. The third part of the job again becomes how are we going to communicate it to a stakeholder, or how are we going to align the stakeholder on a particular solution. This becomes again the third part of the job. Again, the once you are doing all of this, you simultaneously also have to develop certain sector specific knowledge or the technical knowledge in the field you are working in. Now, while all of this is done, there are times when we as a group of consultant also zoom out and do scoping, or how are we going to align the stakeholders in the long term. Of course, a bit of PPT making and traveling to different locations is involved. But yes, this is how a typical day looks like, focusing a lot on new problem statements, talking to new people, making sure we are able to communicate the solutions that we are working on in a very digestible format. Now, moving to the second part of the questions, how roles and responsibilities are divided across different levels and how teams are working together on one problem statement or on a different problem statement. So, I would like to just relate it to what I mentioned earlier, the steps that I mentioned earlier in my day-to-day life. So, roles and responsibilities across the team is fairly flat, and everyone is picking up or leading some bit or the another. Like on a senior associate consultant, that's the senior associate consultant, you are the owner of your work stream. You will be doing the problem solving. You will be doing the output production, and also you will be building up your sector knowledge. But when you progress to a consultant level, of course, you will be handling more work streams. You have to develop like end-to-end sectorial understanding and to be very thorough with what kind of uh, solution or solution design is going to a stakeholder. Progressing more to a senior consultant level, you have to have a project wide scope, and you are now less into output generation but more into guiding the team how the team is thinking across, given the fact you have to be the thought leader. Now on the manager front, on the senior moving forward from the senior consultant at the manager front, you are doing end-to-end stakeholder management, and you are ensuring that everything in project is moving in the right direction, both from a micro and macro point of view. Although in all of this distribution of work, I would like to highlight that GDI itself is a very flat hierarchy structure. Like everyone here is working on the similar kind of problem statements. Just the number of problem statement might vary at the position you are working in. And everyone is very free to pick up their own things, and the playground is completely open, I would say. Thank you so much, Ronak. That's it from my side.
Thank you so much, Aditya. And we'll actually move on to the next question, which is about how would you describe the culture at GDI and what do you look for in a candidate during the recruitment process? And this question is for Parushi.
Yeah, thank you, Ronak. As Aditya rightly mentioned, that GDI is a extremely flat organization, and it's a very driven startup. And from there only you can imagine that what kind of values we chase, especially working in social impact sector. First thing he talked about is the ownership level, which starts from day one you enter the organization. So that leadership streak, that ownership is something which we are really looking for, and not just from the someone who's sitting at a higher pedestal, but someone who's just like even entered at associate or senior associate level. Second would be, and from there it flows, what flows is the integrity aspect of it, how committed, accountable, and you are as a worker. Because again, when something is given to you, it is your work stream. Nobody is going to pester you with that. Anything happens, good or bad, it is your responsibility. Someone who is really integral and accountable in his or her working is someone we really appreciate. Lastly, I would say the person should be very good in collaborating things. That's what one of our cultural values is, because as the sector entails, it has a lot of stakeholders. Unlike private sector, government, whenever it is launching a program, there are a lot of people involved in pulling off a successful program, and hence you need to work with a lot of people in the ecosystem, and someone who is good at it will be a good fit for the organization. Coming to what we look in a candidate, I would segregate that into for instance, into what the consulting skills would be looking like, cultural fit, and your inclination towards the sector. So because we act driven, mission driven organization, we would want someone who is inclined, who has inclination towards social impact sector, because I mean, without that, I till the time you do not emotionally feel for the cause you're working for, I I don't feel that you'll be really into solving the problems. The second thing would be around, because we are startup, we are consulting startup. For that is exactly what management consult. We can copy paste all the skills which a management consulting firm would do, and that is what we also expect out of a candidate. Typical consulting skills would be problem solving, communication skills, logical thinking, stakeholder management. The basic, if you really outline what a typical good consultant, smart consultant would look like, so these are certain things which we definitely look at. Third would be cultural fit. the values which I talked, leadership, ownership, accountability, integrity, mission driven. These are the things which maybe, when we are skimming through your CVs, we would assess, maybe through your PORs, or maybe the past experience you have had, maybe working with NGOs, maybe working with the government, maybe, just like handling projects in general. So from there we can definitely gauge all these qualities and then assess accordingly. So yeah, that's it from my side. Over to you, Ronak.
Thank you so much, Marushi. I think you very succinctly captured the culture and what we look for in a candidate. With that, we'll end the round where we cover the commonly asked questions, and we will now be opening the floor to everybody to ask questions. We did not have to wait till now for people to be asking questions in the chat box. I've been getting a lot of them even directly to myself, and I'm sure all the speakers are. So what we'll do is we will now be taking questions from everybody, to ensure that everybody gets a fair chances at asking questions. Obviously, you can ask questions in the chat box, but please address them to everyone. And secondly, raise your hand if you want to address a speaker directly. So you can actually, if you raise your hand, we will allow people to unmute themselves, and ask questions. So yeah, we can start now. Just one note, we request that you ask questions which would benefit everybody on the call. We do have a team interaction around later on in the process. So if you have very specific questions to yourself or your situation, we will cover those in those team interaction rounds. And for now, we prefer if you ask questions that are for the benefit of everybody on the call. So yeah, with that, we'll start. We already have some people raising their hands. So just a second. So Stuti, I'll just unmute you. You will now be able to unmute. Please ask your question.
Sure. Thank you, Ronak. I have two questions and I'll keep them short. So the first question is that while I think Aditya touched upon it briefly while explaining how one needs to develop sectoral expertise, are our project and sectoral preferences taking into account, and projects are given accordingly? So I'm an ESG consultant and I have certain backgrounds. I was just wondering if that would factor in at any point while projects are allocated. One. Two, what are some technical skills you are looking for in a consultant apart from your standard knowledge of statistical softwares? I think Parushi touched upon this broadly, but I wanted to understand if there was something specific and technical GD I was looking for.
So thank you so much, Stuti. The first question that you asked, I will direct to Aditya. So Aditya, please.
Yes. Hi, Stuti. Thank you so much for the question. So definitely when we are allotting the projects, we keep in mind what the preferences of a certain candidates are, and also definitely their past experiences. But however, we have to keep in mind that there are times when project allotment, again, in a typical consulting firm, is also based upon where the current requirements are. So we definitely keep your viewpoint preferences in mind in the long-term career, but your first project allotment might not be the exact fit, but we definitely keep your preferences in mind in a long term. I think it answers your question.
We hope this answers your question, Stuti. And we'll also move on to the second question, which was, do we need any particular technical skills when we are looking for people to recruit? So Parushi, if you could take up this question, please.
Yeah. Hi, Stuti. Particularly, we do not look at very hardcore technical skills. We do look at basic problem solving, logical thinking, and structured thinking, inclination towards the sector. Those things are definitely are non-negotiables. However, if someone comes with some sub sector expertise, we would keep that thing into our consideration while we are allotting the, like how Aditya was telling, because in long run someone would want to have that sort of an exposure. However, we particularly do not, really press upon a very technical skills from the candidate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Stuti, to sum it up, we don't look for any particular skills, any technical skills. The soft skills and problem-solving skills that Parushi mentioned previously are the only ones we really look for. And obviously, any technical skills that you have are an add-on, but they are not considered very heavily. Yeah, so I hope Stuti's questions were answered. We will now move on to the next person. So Abhishek, I will ask you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Yes, good evening, everyone. First of all, a great thank you for conducting this session. It really helps a lot to understand more about GD. And my question is, which skills take precedence in social impact consulting as compared to normal consulting?
Sorry, Abhishek, I could not hear you. Could you ask your question again?
Yeah. I will repeat. My question is, which skills take precedence in social impact consulting as compared to normal consulting? Am I
Okay.
audible?
Yeah, you were audible. Vijay, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sure, Ronak. Uh, I'm just assuming normal consulting, you mean the management consulting part of it. Typically in social consulting or the impact consulting that we talk about, we're essentially talking about the outcomes that really matter to people. This is more people oriented, people centric, and rather I would put it citizen centric. So if you take a look at all of our projects, the essential outcome is not necessarily to make governments profitable or to make any body profitable, but rather how better we can impact the lives of people so that everybody's income and other aspects improve. So I think that lens of looking at the problem statement changes drastically from a management consulting to a social consulting. But if you ask me if there's a difference in the skill set that's required, yes, again, the perspective that you bring to the table is the major difference I feel. In social consulting, you always think about the end user of your solutions, uh, which is essentially the people, the citizens at the end of the day. So I think this lens at every aspect of problem solving is the major difference that I feel is between the two worlds. Over to you, Ronak.
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. And I hope, Abhishek, that your question is answered. If you want, we can clarify.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, again, before we go on, would just like to point out, we have a lot of people raising their hands. Hopefully, we'll be able to cover everybody and take everyone's questions. But please keep putting questions in the chat box, and I would suggest that you put questions and raise them to everybody instead of directly to anyone, so that it's easier for everyone to refer to them. Next, so Mansa, you also raised your hand. Please, I'll allow you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ronak. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Right. Firstly, thank you for the session. I had two questions as well. One is both in the recruitment form and even while Aditya was explaining the project, it was mentioned that we will have to travel extensively, right? So as a associate consultant or a senior associate consultant, what level of client engagement will we have? Or is it dedicated only to the senior level positions? That's my first question. So will associate and senior associate consultants also get to be part of stakeholder engagement or client engagement? The second question is more of a logistical question. So it says that you need almost two plus years of experience for the senior associate consultant position. And so do you consider full-time work that is done even during our college, not internships, like full-time based projects or full-time work, or is it only considered work experience after our graduation?
Understood. Thank you for your question, Mansa. Aditya, would you take up the first question?
Yes. So thank you for the question. Everyone starting from an associate consultant to a senior associate or a consultant, everyone is very much directly involved with the stakeholders on the work streams that they are working on. Your sometimes you might be assisted by a consultant or a senior consultant in a stakeholder engagement, but I would like to just establish that everyone working here is getting a front end client facing role, even irrespective of any positions you are working in. However, your work streams might be smaller or you're working on the smaller pieces in the project, but you always have a front client facing work, especially in the work stream that you are leading on. I think that answers your question, Mansu.
Yeah. And to answer your second question, Mansa, so we do not consider work done during college, even if it is full time, to be part of your work experience. We do expect that we only count work that is done after you have graduated as work experience, and it is then counted accordingly. However, if you are if that is the case, if that is your case currently, and that's why you asked the question, we will still be, checking applications on a rolling basis even after the recruitment drive is over. So we do encourage you to still apply. But yeah, I hope that answers your questions. We will move on to the next person. So Pranali Jha, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but please, I'm asking you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Hi, Ronak. This is Pranali. Yeah, thank you. I'm curious about what does a typical project life cycle for impact consulting at JDI looks like, right? And how usually is the team structured around it? So yeah, that's all. I hope it's clear.
Okay. Aditya, again, I'm having to direct this question to you.
Yeah, sure. The typical government project life cycles are slightly longer if you compare it with the management consulting project, because the scale of the project is most of the projects that we are working on, the scale is much wider and the impact numbers are very high. So the typical project life cycle is depends upon which ministry we are engaging with and what kind of work we are doing with that particular ministry. But our engagement and the work streams will keep on repeating, keep on changing at a very frequent interval, so that we are not working on one piece for longer, but our engagement typically lasts for at least a year and a year and a half. That's the average, I can say, but it depends widely upon what kind of work we are doing it and with which stakeholders we are working on. I think that if it answers your question.
Thank you so much, Aditya. And to answer another aspect of your question, which was the length of a typical project. So as we mentioned, there are two types of projects we do. There are transformation projects and strategy projects. When we talk about strategy projects, they are usually shorter. So strategy projects would be around 3 to 6 months on average. And when you consider transformation projects, as we say, they're transformational, so we're also implementing. In that case, usually the projects are 2 years or sometimes even more. So yeah, we hope that answers your questions. And we move on to the next person, Rupali.
Yeah. Hi, Rona. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
So I have basically two questions. I wanted to understand how does probably a need identification, or for example, how does UDI recognizes they would like to work with this sort of ministry, and what probably even under a single ministry on a single problem, because there are multiple folds of problem that exist within the system, right? So how is that need identification done at GDI? Is there a process or probably a brainstorming that might happen within the leadership or somebody? B is, I think, a logistical question would be when you were mentioning that a full-time experience along with a college degree would not be considered probably. Would a full-time fellowship experience post-college degree be considered as part of the experience? Because a fellowship is, I'm specifically talking about the Gandhi Fellowship Program. It's a very intense, rigorous social impact program, and I think can contribute highly to the type of quality impact based solutions you guys are looking for. But then, how does it entirely rolls out?
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, Rupali. So Vijay, I'll ask you to answer the first question, which is about need identification and how we do that exercise.
Right. Yeah. So I think identification of the problem statement or need is very subjective in the sense that which stage of the program that you're getting engaged. So typically we start off typically assuming that we get engaged in a program at a design level itself. And at a very initial stage, I think a lot of time and effort goes in identifying the root cause of the problem and building solutions around it. So I'll again give an example of how we approached in HADP. Probably that will help you to contextualize better. So when we started working on HADP, there was an apex committee that was formed, which was the same committee which designed the doubling of farmers' income program. So the committee had thought through and put in their technical expertise and had designed the program. So at this point of time, the need identification, like you framed it, was more about how do we get this on ground. So how do we actually implement this? How do we take this to farmers? Because the program itself was so immense, so huge that it was very highly impossible for someone to understand it in one go. So how do we take this? How do we simplify this and take it on ground? And that's when we started to deep dive into it, and that's how all the different work streams that emerged, and eventually we were focusing on implementation. So in a similar engagement with the J&K government, we're working on design part where we have a very broad and vague problem statement. How do we generate more employment? So that becomes a very challenging case where we really need to understand the landscape much deeper and wider and design the strategy itself in the first place. So in a nutshell, I just want to convey that the need or the problem statement varies from different point to point, and it's a very subjective call on the length and breadth that you really want to do. But ultimately, what matters is the delivery and what impact do we really create out of it, and how do we create this systemic transformation through the governance ecosystem.
Thank you, Vijay. And to answer the next part of your question, so you mentioned that the fellowship that if we consider fellowship experience post college as part of your work-ex, so it's very subjective. It depends on what fellowship. You did mention your fellowship, but it will again be judged during the further rounds that we do, and also the kind of experience you got during the fellowship and the sector that it was in. So I'm just answering this question more generically for everyone's benefit, but it will be judged on a case-by-case basis. So thank you for your questions. So moving on, so Aditya Tiwari, I'll just ask you to unmute. Yeah, you can ask your question.
Yeah, am I audible, Rana?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so my question is, as Parushi was she drew an analogy between the kind of skills GDI is looking for, and it is somewhat similar to management consulting, like problem solving, structural approach, and communication, effective communication. So, how does the recruitment process does it look similar to management consulting firms? Is it also centered around guesstimates or case studies, case interviews in the similar manner? So, this was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, since this is a follow-on to Parushi's question, Parushi, please, can you take this question?
Hi, Aditya. Yes, so our process also, if gone through it, I mean, the description, if you have seen, it would revolve around solving case studies. It will revolve around, there's a concept note around where again you're given a problem to solve for. Of course, the kind of problems are very different from what typical management consulting firms a firm would do. Basically, the problems are more on social impact. They're more complex. They're not just about chasing profits and all. They're more on creating impact for the citizens or the end beneficiary. So you can expect the kind of problems you'll be thrown at again. How it will look like when you join GDI would be similar. However, the skill sets would be, all the kind of problems or the process would entail would be typical case studies or guesstimates. And again, the skills which we are looking for would be sort of visible while you are solving for cases. For instance, structured thinking, how logically you're breaking down the problem, how you're playing around with numbers, and again, that inclination towards the sector. We are again chasing for the impact and the beneficiaries. You have to always keep that in mind. You have different partners, so how we're gonna place those partners and make them as part of a strategy. So those are the things which will essentially come while you're solving for cases or guesstimates. So that's how it is similar to management consulting. However, there's some parts of it which are typical to the sector, and that will be visible across your process.
Yeah, thank you, Parushi. And we will also be covering the recruitment process, towards the end of the session. So you will get utmost clarity by the end as well. But I hope your question has been answered. Next, Sunila Dikshit. Please ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, Ronak. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
So I had two questions. First is do solutions always translate into real action? And second is, on an average, how frequently do you have to travel each month?
Just for clarity, could you repeat your first question again?
First question is, do solutions always translate into real action?
Okay. Vijay, could you take this question?
Yeah, very abstract question. I think that's very. So yeah, solutions do translate into action. So in fact, one of the principles that we firmly believe is solution first. So you walk in for a meeting, you have a problem statement at hand. You can easily frame a solution in 5 minutes and take about, or even take about a year to frame the solutions. But essentially, we do not, like Parushi also mentioned, agility is one of the cultures that we believe. So we do not get fixated on one solution, believing that my solution is the best. And solution evolves over time, and so action is both a means and end to achieving this solution, I feel. So you start implementing things, you learn, you go back and make your solution much more better and much more realistic. And I think throughout this journey, that's what we've also experienced, that we start off with some solution and we end up implementing something, but ultimately the goal is what really translated for the people or the citizens at the end of the day. So to answer it in a very nutshell, yes, solutions are uh, do translate into action, and that's what we also believe in the first place.
Thank you, Vijay. I hope that answers your question, Sunila.
Yeah.
Great. And your second question, which was how often do we need to travel? I'll just take this up quickly. There is no set number or average. There are projects in Delhi, there are projects outside Delhi. The base location will always is Delhi. But if you are on a project, let's say in Punjab, then you will be stationed in Chandigarh and so on. Again, depends on what project you're staffed on. So yeah, we obviously try to accommodate people when required, but it is expected that you will travel as per the project needs. So yeah, thank you for your questions.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. We will move on to Sumed Kumar. Sumed, please.
Hey Ronak, hi team. Am I audible?
Yeah. I should also ask that. A lot of people are saying I'm not.
Sometimes you are not. So my question is, does GDI work with state, central, or both the governments? And what are some key challenges you have to face while working with the government as a stakeholder, especially when the leaders change due to elections and transfers?
Great. Aditya, I think you can take up this question.
So, thank you for the question, Sumit. Yes, we are working with both state and central government. As Vijay highlighted, we are working with 10 plus state governments and also with four central ministries. So we are working with the, all the like the state and the central ministry. And answering your second question on how our vision of change get impacted in case of political shift or in case of transfers. So uh, I would say that the moment you are working on a project, yes, the timeline might get changed due to the political shift and with the transfer of officers. But the core principle that we are working on is to ensure that we are there in the ministry when the transition is happening, so that we are able to establish ourselves there, help ensuring both the prior and the post people in power with our mission, and also help them see what our value in the system is. So ensuring that even if there is a delay, our vision of change is not getting impacted through political and political headwinds and transfers. Although there are timeline delays, I would definitely agree to that. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. We hope your questions are answered, Praful. Sumit, sorry. The next person to ask the question is Praful. Yeah, Praful, please.
Hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the session, guys. So I have a very quick question. So you guys mentioned that you use the number of lives impacted as a metric to measure the impact. So is this the only metric that is being used, or are there any other key metrics which are there, which we look at when we let's say measure the impact of the project which we have done? And my follow-up question was again regarding the WorkX part. Do you guys consider pro bono consulting in the social sector as an add-on WorkX in addition to the professional work experience which a candidate has? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Praful. To answer your first question, which is about how we monitor and evaluate the outcome of our projects, apart from just seeing the number of lives impacted, Parushi, would you be taking this question?
Yeah. So, yes, number of lives is important, but sometimes what it happens is you're not really able, and sometimes the project demand is also not to just measure the number of lives impacted. It may be, for instance, I'll just give you a small example. We are working in Haryana with Pollution Control Board. There, essentially, in long term, we can imagine is when the AQ becomes better, the lives would be positively impacted. However, there is a difference between outcome and output. So sometimes we're chasing output to achieve that outcome of lives, better lives. So here the outcome can be output can be increasing the air quality, and even to drill down further, what all interventions need to go right. For instance, you need to introduce new EVs in the market, or you need to maybe better your industrial standards. So these are the things which need to go inside the project to achieve midterm output, which would eventually impact the lives of people, and that is the graduation approach which we follow. And that's how you input, you have an output, and those outputs combine to give you what we chase as lives impacted. So this is
Got it.
sometimes the projects might look like we don't have numbers attached to them, but indirectly you will see that impact actually coming along in the long term. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Panushi. Thank you.
Okay.
And to your second question, which was if we would consider pro bono consulting experience as part of your WorkX. So it is a good add-on to have, especially since you mentioned it's in the social sector, but the duration of your work experience still remains the same. So it won't be an additional let's say you did a year as in a formal job, and then you also did a pro bono consulting on top of it. Within that year, we won't count that as 2 years. Still be 1 year, but it'll be an additional add-on. If that was your question.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Nirmal Pathak. I'll ask you to unmute. Please ask your question. Okay, we'll pass on the opportunity to Anirban. Anirban, do you have a question?
Hello, everyone. I'm Anirban. Thank you for the wonderful presentation today, and it was great to learn about you. The certain things which I wanted to ask, while I was going through the slides, the work mainly is related to social sector, which is mostly distributed across the western and the central region of India. So, do GDI look to transform its project and approach to the other states also? And also, my second question will be, since this is more into consulting and looking into the betterment of lives of people, so how do we make sure that the impact we have made is sustainable in the long run? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take up your first question. So we're always, as we showed, we want to grow and expand and cover more geographies because we want the impact to be spread out as much as possible. So whenever we do get an opportunity, we would want to, cover any geography. We are a geography and sector agnostic firm. So there is no particular focus that we have in that area. So that's to the first question. Your second question, which is about long-term impact and sustainability of the impact, Vijay, I would request you to take that question.
Sure, Ronak. I think Aditya answered it briefly about duration in any engagement. So typically it ranges from 1 to 2 years, or depending on the program. One of the key criteria that we sort of have in every intervention is that the solution that we develop or the intervention that we design do not die in the short term. So sustainability becomes the first and foremost and the most critical aspect while designing any intervention. So yes, there are many interventions that are tech-based. There are interventions that are high on data, and we do understand that current ecosystem does not have the enough capabilities to take those initiatives forward. But ideally, what we eventually do is try to build those capabilities also, which are required to adopt those solutions. So it's just not the key difference in social consulting and at GDA. What we do is we do not just suggest solutions, we try and implement them, and we also ensure that these solutions have a lasting impact. So I think to sum it up and to answer this question, yes, sustainability is a very important factor, and if there are not enough capabilities within the system, we ensure those capabilities are built so that the solutions are lasting in the long term. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. So next we will go to Dev Jyoti. So Dev Jyoti, I'm unmuting you. Please ask your question.
Hi, good evening, GDI team. Thank you. So actually, to set some context, so I'm someone with about 10 years of experience in consulting and strategy. So just wanted to understand the current, hiring that is going on, or the skill gap that GDI is trying to solve. Is there a specific years of experience or any specific skill set? As you all mentioned, the skill set is not a bar, but is there any specific years of experience that the team is looking at? That is one. And the second question is, again related to this level of experience, specifically at a mid-management level, I'm expecting that there'll be a lot of stakeholder engagement that's required. So, like any consulting engagement, there'll be internal and external stakeholders. When we consider the external stakeholders, be the state government or the central government, what are the typical kind of clients or stakeholders that we are expected to interact with on a day-to-day basis to implement solutions or to discuss change or transformation initiatives?
Thank you so much, Debjyoti. So to answer your first question, yes, we do consider WorkX as a part of the recruitment process. So different positions as we go from senior associate consultant to manager have different requirements of work experience. Since you mentioned you have 10 plus years of WorkX, depending on the relevancy of the work experience and the sectors you worked in, you would usually be eligible for a manager position. But again, that depends on your profile and where you have worked. So that I hope that answers your first question. Your second question, I would direct to Aditya.
Thank you for the question, Debojyoti. In terms of what are the kind of stakeholders we are engaging with, again, depends upon two factors. The first being what is the work stream that particularly we are working on, and second is that what is the how that particular project is placed with either state or a central government. In case of workstream, typically because we are working a lot, and I will be answering this question on the context of my project where I'm working with. If I'm working with Ministry of Rural Development, there are a lot of times when I am interacting with government middle management, like a director or us like a officer with like 10 years of work experience, when he's handling a piece of work that we want to assist them on or provide strategic support on. There are times when we need higher level strategic decision making, then we are talking to someone at a secretary level. So the kind of stakeholders that we are engaging on is very pretty much dependent upon what exactly decision making we need, and second, of course, what's the extent of decision making, because there's a lot of time in government delegation is happening. So there are times when a junior officer will direct you to a senior officer. So the stakeholders keep changing depending on the relevancy and the work stream that we are working on. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. Next, Ishita Jain, asking you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Hi, Ronak. Thanks for this opportunity. I would like to ask the panel, what is the typical or average number of days for this recruitment process from the submission of concept note that we're supposed to submit by 10th of October? How many days would it take for a candidate to successfully get an offer letter?
So just to clarify, your the final date for submission is not 10th of October, it is 15th of October. Though we are doing it on a rolling basis, so the earlier you apply, it is better. But again, just to reiterate, as I said, it's all happening on a rolling basis, so there is no set timeline between when you fill the form and when you get the final interview and when you get the final result. It happens based on the number of applications we are shortlisting, and you know how, again, that would then determine how many interviews are happening. So we can't really give you a timeline on that. But again, you will be promptly informed of the decision that is being taken at each step. So as you move on, you will get to know about if you're moving on to the next round or not. And just a point to clarify, though, one thing that there is a definite timeline on is the concept note round. So once you are shortlisted for that round and you get your concept note, you will get only 48 hours to submit your response. So I know we don't have a concrete answer to your question, but I hope that clarifies it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to ask Chahat. I'll ask you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Yeah, hi Ronak. So basically, I wanted to understand that how does GDI engage in the implementation side of things? Like I understand the consulting part, but where do you engage exactly when it comes to implementing things?
Okay. So I would request Vijay to take this question.
Yeah. So I think I'll just give an example with my project itself,
Sure.
HADP. Yeah. So when we started working on the implementation part of HADP, there were primarily few challenges. One was there was not enough applications coming in, so we wanted more people to apply, which was not eventually happening. So, and this is where GDI comes in. We try to understand what are the problems that that are hindering the entire intention. So we understood that farmers are not getting enough information about where to apply, how to apply, or which is the right project for me. So we designed and we conceptualized this massive awareness campaign called Kisan Sampark Abhiyan, where in each block we had this awareness campaign where field functionaries would go and educate farmers on the different programs and assist them on what suits them the best. So GDI's role per se in this entire process was right from conceptualizing to designing how the information should go to the farmers, what are the means in which this information has to be disseminated, what are the other tools apart from physical interaction that could be used to communicate this information better, and how do we ensure that the event is conducted in every block, how do we train these people so that the same message gets delivered. So there are multiple, when we start breaking down, there are multiple smaller challenges that we foresee, right? So I think when we talk about implementation, again, it's not a one-time thing that we design and we say this is how it should be done. Rather, in the entire journey, we try to work with the work with the government and the um, stakeholders to try and see where all we can ease this entire process so that the implementation is smooth. So I think to sum it up again, implementation is not a one-time effort; it's a continuous effort. So at every point, it involves deep diving into the problem and designing and executing the solutions. I
Sure.
think,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Ahad. So we'll only be taking 5 more questions in the interest of time, and we would request that if you're asking a question and you think it has already been answered or you have already received a response in the chat, please lower your hand. We would want more diverse questions to be answered. So please, I will move on. I will just give you 10 seconds and then move on to the next person. So, okay, Varsha, you have also raised your hand, asking you to unmute.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you so much. So for me, it's like so somebody who is coming from implementation role, mostly working with CSOs and particularly with the government agencies or framework implementation. So does this prior experience of implementation adds value, or or are there any additional skills or competencies that we need to develop to, effectively transition into the consultant role?
So, Varsha, it definitely adds value to know how implementation is done on ground. That is always helpful because that's at the end of the day, that's what we are also trying to achieve by working with our partners. But again, the core skills that we mentioned before, Parushi mentioned specifically, which are problem solving and an ability to, be agile enough and be able to work across sectors and understand problems, that still remains crucial to being able to effectively work at the firm. So yeah, to answer your question, it does help to have implementation experience, but the skills that we require are obviously essential. I hope that answers your question. We will move on to the next person. Just a second. Okay, Jalaj, I would ask you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Hi, Ronak. Thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to know, I got the assignment and just wanted to know what kind of output are you looking like? Is the firm looking at? And do we need to do any background research, or it will be just all assumptions based thing? I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, Jalaj. So we will cover this question briefly when we move on before we end the session. So I'll just request that we'll just cover it then and answer your query then only. I hope that's fine. Yeah, next we have I think most people have now asked the questions. Just okay. Abhineet Kumar, just asking you to unmute.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I have done MBA from healthcare from IIM and AIMS Jammu. So I am little bit inclined towards healthcare domain. So I wanted to understand, do GDI focuses on healthcare projects also? If yes, what kind of project do GDI do in healthcare domain? Can you give me some example of that? Thank you.
So just to answer your question briefly, we are a sector agnostic firm, so there are no particular sectors that we choose or choose not to work in. So currently we are not working on a project in the healthcare domain. But again, as I said, we will be taking up a project if it fits our if a profile of a project that we usually do. So yeah. Mosmi, I will ask you to unmute. Please ask your question.
Hi, thank you. So I have one quick clarification. So people who has not received email about a concept note, does that mean that they are already rejected?
So sorry, you're saying if somebody has not received the concept note,
A concept note, as others are saying about it, does that mean that it's already rejected?
so as we do it on a rolling basis, we keep notifying the applicants, promptly on the status of their application. So you will get a mail confirming the status of the next round.
Okay. A second question is, uh, are you actually like looking for people who has direct experience in social impact sector, or is it okay if someone has experiences in research or data analysis, but it's not like inclined to particular research? It's in a multi-sectoral environment. So are you also considering applications from those type of applicants? Yeah, that's my question. That's it.
So yes, we do accept applications from people with all types of experience. When it comes to senior roles, the relevancy of the experience also matters and is taken into account. But it again depends on what experience you have and how many years. And during the rounds that you have, the further interactions you have, you will get to know a better idea of what kind of a role in the firm you can be considered for. Thank you, Masumi. We'll just take one more question. Vishal Jain, asking you to unmute.
Hello. Hi, Ronald. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. Though my question was already answered about the sector as you mentioned in the slide. So, since you are particular about these all sectors which are being approached with the government, so are these how the project is being approached and why government choose GDI as a partner for these consulting projects? Since as the background of the GDI as you shared is that from 2020 has started approaching these. So I see more of education and agriculture kind of work and projects are there. So my first question is that are you looking for consultants if having a out of these industries background, are they eligible being consulting partners with GDI? And second is how the projects are approached and why government selects you for the projects.
Vishal, as I said, we consider people with all kinds of experience. So again, the relevancy of your experience only matters depending on the role you're applying for. But we don't discourage anybody from applying just because they're not from the sector or they haven't worked in a particular role. So I hope
Okay.
that answers your question. Last question. Okay, who is just a second. Nirmal, do you have a question?
Hello, Ronak. Thanks for the session. My
Yeah.
question is, does GDI working for poverty elimination or converting a poor into a consumer with consultancy of the concerned ministry, or GDI is looking for a consultant who can work for them on this project?
Yes. There was some.
My question is clear?
No, I was not able to hear you very clearly. Could you ask your question again?
Should I ask again?
Yeah, please.
I'm just asking if GDI is... Okay. Should I ask again?
Yes.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please ask your question.
Yeah, I'm just asking, each GDI is working for any kind of project for poverty elimination or converting a poor into a consumer? And my second question is GDI is looking for a consultant who can work on this project with consultants with various ministries? Because I have, put forward some project with the PMO, and that is under considerations. So I just asked to GDI if he's interested any consultant who can work on this project.
So that's very interesting experience that you have, and we encourage you to apply if you haven't already. Again, we consider people with all kinds of experience, so we will not discourage or say that just because you have a particular experience you should not apply. We encourage you to apply, and we'll reach out to you if we see a good fit.
I have already applied with GDI. You can check. I have already.
Okay, sir. So we'll reach out to you as we process your application.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was the last question that we took. We're sorry if some people we were not able to answer your questions. We only have limited time. Again, we have a question in the chat box which has been coming repeatedly about work-life balance. And I'm sure everybody has this in mind when they're applying to a new place. Recently, a lot of you might have also read about this. We believe that work-life balance is a concept which is obviously very easy to answer if you just like the work that you do. So, as we said, we are a mission-driven startup, and all of us who have joined believe in the core mission that we mentioned in the beginning, which is to transform the lives of individuals positively. And as long as we are achieving that, we believe that the work that we do matters, and I don't think you would worry about this question if that's what you believe. So I hope everybody resonates with that and agrees with that. With that, we come to the end of the open forum. Thank you so much for your questions. The next part that we're covering is the CV and Google the timeline for recruitment. So we'll just take you through the rounds very quickly. A lot of you have already applied, so you know that we start with an application round, which is a Google form, where you also submit your resume. People who are shortlisted from that are then moved on to a concept note round, where you get 48 hours to submit your response. After that, there is the first case interview round, and it's a typical case round, but it involves a social impact related case and not just a typical management consulting case. If you're shortlisted in that round, you move on to a team interaction, and which is not an evaluative round. It is just a round where you get the opportunity to interact with one of our team members individually. So it is sort of like this AMA session that we had, but more personal, and you can ask more pointed questions in that round. And finally, after the first case interview, you move on to the final case interview with our CEO, Ankur Bansal. And that is the final round, and the decision is usually, the candidate is usually informed of the decision soon after that round. So yeah, these are the steps that we follow for recruitment. A lot of you are already on some or the other part of the steps, so wishing you all the best for that. And just reiterating that the deadline for application is Tuesday, 15th October. And we encourage you to apply as soon as you can, because we are shortlisting candidates on a rolling basis. With that, so the next thing is that, as we promised in the campaign that we did for this AMA session, if you would remember, we did mention that there will be a surprise at the end. Now, the surprise is that we will be sharing a set of resources, a document with the list of resources, which would be very helpful for you for the rest of the recruitment process. And we'll be sharing it with everybody who registered and attended the AMA session. So it's great that all of you have joined, and we're just sending the link in the chat box. So only people who have stayed till now actually get access to these resources. So yeah, it's great that all of you have stayed in the session and have been interactive. The link has been sent in the chat box, and you can all access it to get access to these resources. Okay. We'll also pin that or highlight that so that everybody gets it. But moving on, finally, before we finish, we would just quickly invite our speakers to share a key highlight from their journey at GDI so far. So starting with Parushi. Parushi, please.
Yeah. So I would like to share a highlight from today itself, I would say. At GDI, and that's what we covered, that it's a unique place where you get the platform to interact with highest level of stakeholders, be it the chief secretary, additional chief secretary, um, those kind of bureaucrats and people sitting up higher in the hierarchy. So I would say, and again, so today it was with the Ministry of so some ministry I'm currently working with, and there I was interacting with one of the highest officials, and then I realized that I've just like been in the system for past 10 months now, and I'm already engaging and helping senior bureaucrats. So yeah, that's pretty much the highlight from my end.
Thank you, Parushi. Vijay, would you like to go next?
Sure, Ronak. So for me, I think this entire journey has been a lot of learning and a lot more of unlearning. So in an otherwise circumstance, I would have probably been in Chennai, just outside the secretariat. I would have just looked at the buildings and saw how massive it is. So power was always very distant to me. And today, having seated in a chair just opposite to the principal secretary of my department, I always feel with power comes responsibilities also, and the vision at which we all align on. We all always align on a common vision always excites me, and in the process, I tend to learn a lot of new things, and every day there's been a new learning, and also unlearned a lot of facts about the entire system and the ecosystem in which we live in. So that's been a very key highlight for me in this entire journey.
Thank you, Vijay. Next, Aditya, requesting you to share a highlight.
Yes, thank you so much, Ronak. So honestly, the key highlight for me during my GDI journey have been to the kind of problem statements I have worked on, or how I was able to leverage my past skill sets to design completely different solutions while staying in GDI. So coming from a very high, very finance heavy job to GDI, I realized that uh, I always wanted to work in some sort of financial inclusion sector. Then GDI gave me a level playing field on how we can actually go ahead and design financial solutions for rural women. So that gave me the opportunity to leverage my past understanding of finance, how the society is working, and just the kind of problem statements I'm tackling on a day-to-day basis. Like literally a month ago, I was working on this problem statement where how we can ensure a one-click loan access to all the rural women in India. So the kind of problem statements and the the boundless thinking, and whatever I want to work on, I can pick it up, I can plan my work accordingly, and I can work on that. I think this have been the highlight of my GDI journey, resonating on the Vijay's thought of learning a lot or unlearning a lot. But yeah, the kind of problem statements I've been working on is the highlight of my GDI journey. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you, Aditya. And finally, I'll also share a highlight from my journey. So we were working, as I mentioned, with the Ministry of Women and Child Development, and the secretary, after a meeting, told us that the interventions that we had proposed would probably end up reducing the number of children who are trafficked out of the country, because we were dealing with the adoption portal of the country. And I think that's the day when I understood the value of the work that we do. And yeah, I think that's why we do what we do. So hope that a lot of you resonate with what we try to explain today and the kind of mission that we're trying to achieve. And thank you so much for joining us. It's a Tuesday evening, and a lot of you have been on the call for greater part of 2 hours. So we are really glad and appreciate that you took out time to understand more about the work we do and the culture at GDI. Before we finish the session, we would just like to leave you with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who said that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Thank you so much, and that's about it for today. Thank you.